Welcome to License to Spend with Tim Whisler from the Whisler Agency. Immerse yourself in expert insights on financial strategies that will empower you to confidently navigate your way to retirement freedom. Join us on this journey towards financial confidence. It's time to take control of your financial future.
Remember when you were little and you wanted everyone to know you were 5 and a half? And then you rounded off and it became 21 or 30. And then you started talking in the decades. I'm in my late 50s. Well, birthdays don't stop. And some have special significance when it comes to retirement planning. I'm Patrice Sikora with your host, Tim Whisler, who has some key birthdays we should know about. I'm not going to ask you how old you are, Tim. I won't do that.
That's all good.
Don't ask me either.
No. I know better than that. That's right.
So what are some important birthdays and why are they important? That's the big thing.
I think it's, as we know, I love how you introed that because it was always so much fun saying that half, right, when you were a kid. But, we might feel a little bit differently about our birthdays in our adult years. Obviously we still need to look forward to them. But I think, in fact, there's actually a timeline that I'm looking forward to sharing with our conversation today about some key dates as we continue to go down that spectrum of celebrating birthdays and putting another candle on the birthday cake every year.
So what's the first big one that people should really be aware of? And should you start thinking about that big one decades before?
I definitely think it's good to be aware. I really do. The first one we really kind of start off this timeline with is the big 50, right? Turning 50. Normally what I see a lot of times is whenever I have conversations with folks, it's always fun where I hear quite often, I should have done this sooner. Well, everybody could say that. It's okay. Yes, we should have. I mean, when sooner? I mean, when you're 5 or the first time you get your job flipping a hamburger somewhere. I mean, we always could have done something sooner. But when it comes to understanding this little episode we're going to record, I think it's important for people to understand that 50, it kind of starts this timeline. And what's really important to understand about 50 is this is where you can kind of start to play what the IRS calls catch up. This is where now you can start increasing your contributions. Like, for example, if we're focusing on, maybe a 401k contribution, or if you're focusing on contributing to a Roth, for example, at 50, that's when the government allows you to maybe put a few more dollars into that. For example, if we are 49 and under for 2024, the amount you can contribute per year is $7,000. Well, if you're 50 and older for this year, you can add another $1,000 to that. So, that can kind of come into play as far as, if we're looking at maybe trying to defer some taxes for down the road. Now, obviously, we've got to be very cautious with how we do that. But obviously, when you do that, those extra contributions will reduce that current year's taxable income. But then also, too, if we're a little more proactive on maybe that catch-up contribution, and we can be very faithful by taking advantage of that extra $1,000, for example, that gives those other account values an opportunity to increase in value down the road.
Is there anything special you have to do to make that catch-up contribution?
Not really, no. It's just a matter of just understanding that, hey, we're now eligible because we're turning 50 in that calendar year. So I think it's just kind of good to know. And again, going back to what we've talked before in the past about, budget. Does our budget allow us to take advantage of these catch-up contributions? And if so, by all means, implement the strategy. Either, contact your 401k administrator and bump those contributions up, have a reduction in your paycheck. Or again, if you're kind of managing maybe your own Roth IRA and you're having systematic, deposits going right into your Roth IRA from your bank account, go ahead and bump those up as well. Or you can also do kind of maybe a one-time, lump sum contribution and then kick them off maybe at the calendar year next year.
All right. So 50 is catch-up contributions.
50 is the catch-up.
What's the next one?
So the next one, we kind of have a few years between now and then. So the next kind of big one is 59 and a half. So here comes that half again. So, this is kind of where we get to kind of quote unquote be in charge, if you will. What I mean by that is all those accounts that you have that are earmarked for retirement. This is where now you have access to those accounts where you can withdraw from them penalty free. Now, again, that's kind of a blanket statement. There are certain situations where, a couple of life events that may happen where you can access those funds without penalties, but again, they have to be based upon certain life events, if you will. But just as a blanket statement for everybody, this is where now you can start taking withdrawals from those accounts earmarked for retirement. And this is kind of what the beginning of what Ed Slott calls that sweet spot. Right? We've talked about this before,
Right.
59 and a half until RMDs. And we'll get to RMDs here in a second. But for 59 and a half, I'd kind of like to everybody key in on a couple different things. Number one, let's say we're still working. We plan on working for another 2, 3, 5 years, whatever the timeline is where we're going to retire from our full-time employment. If your employer offers that in-service distribution, it kicks off at 59 and a half. And now again, what is an in-service distribution and who's eligible for that? Well, again, it's case by case. It's by company's discretion. So for example, here in Central Illinois, Caterpillar, Big Yellow, right? They offer the in-service distribution. And I've actually, ironically enough, helped a couple of clients here in 2024 execute some in-service distributions. That basically means that employee now has access to their 401k. And now if they want to maybe move those dollars out of that 401k into some other type of vehicle, they now can pick and choose what vehicle they want to move those to. And they can do that. It's not a withdrawal, so they're not going to pay any taxes on it. They're simply executing a direct rollover via an in-service distribution because they're 59 and a half.
Do they have to roll over the money into something that the employer holds, or can they do it outside on their own?
They can do something completely on their own.
Okay.
All we have to do is, what I always remind them of this is making sure that we dial in the tax classification of the dollars, pre-tax as opposed to after tax. Okay. So once we have dialed that in, and clients are like, because here's kind of how the conversation has gone. I think of immediately, I think of Dean and Maureen, some clients that we brought on earlier this year. Sweet, sweet people, and so enjoyable working with them. And they found that out. They actually attended one of our events that we held earlier in the year, and we started talking about that. They came in, we had the get acquainted conversation, and we started talking through some things. And he said, "Boy, I really like where I'm at right now, the value, but I kind of want to protect it a little bit." I'm like, "Well, this is one thing we can do." We started talking about that. So, and then ironically enough, Maureen works for a smaller company and they do the same thing. So on two different occasions, we were able to move again that specific dollar amount, pre-tax out into a traditional IRA or after tax into a Roth IRA. So therefore, it can be outside of the realm of their 401k administrator's world, and they can go and move those funds into something on their own if they would like.
Okay. All right. That's good. Is there, okay, you mentioned the pre-tax and post-tax. Is it often that people will take a pre-tax account and move it to a Roth and then do the taxes?
You can, and that's actually a good, very, very good question. That can be a whole nother episode all by itself. But it's definitely one to bring up. So yes, because of the fact that we now can access these dollars without there being what the IRS calls a pre-withdrawal penalty. In other words, that all stems from turning 59 and a half. That's usually, again, why Ed Slott calls it the sweet spot. Because now that we have access to these dollars, I think now it's imperative for us to really give it serious thought to how long we want to continue to defer the taxes inside of that account. Because again, the longer we defer taxes, the bigger that account value might be. And all of a sudden now we come to RMD age, which we'll get to here in a second. That simply just can increase the amount of our taxable income down the road, which, as we know, can impact Social Security. And sometimes it can also impact Medicare. Not for everybody, but we just know it can kind of maybe linger out there for people who've done a really good job of, have been blessed maybe by having some sizable 401k accounts. And they start getting into that 7-figure range and a little bit higher. And all of a sudden you start kicking that tax deferred can further down the road. That potentially could create some taxable issues down the road that can impact more than just what your current income tax is for that year. So, I just think it's good for us to think through, okay, at 59 and a half, we have access to it. I think it behooves us to have that conversation. Should we start looking at doing some Roth conversions?
Right.
Maybe to kind of, again, to lower that taxable income down the road.
All right, then. The next one is 62.
62. So again, when we start thinking of Social Security, right? 62 is when we can turn it on at the earliest. Now, again, there are some certain life situations that come up where we might be able to turn on earlier, but I'm just speaking for the general public. They've paid into Social Security. You have a Social Security account. You're online. You're going online and getting your statement, and you can see that they start calculating your benefits at 62. All right. I remember years and years ago, Patrice, that I would do educational events, workshops. We always used to do them at the local Golden Corral. You have Golden Corrals where you're at?
I think there used to be one around, but I can't be sure about that. But I have
So
heard of them.
Yep. So it's just a great place. It's buffet. I mean, they had everything you could pretty much think of. And the nice thing about it was our local Golden Corral here in Peoria, before it closed a few years ago, they had their own little room. So it was great. That way, then people could register, and for people who showed up, they said, okay, go on back there, and we had our own little room. My point is, when people were happy eating Golden Corral food, they were also being fed some Social Security information. And I always shared this information using the example of triplets, Stan, Earl, and Dell. So Earl took his Social Security early. Stan took it at his standard age, 66 in a few months, or 67, whatever the birthday was. And then Dell delayed it until 70. So let's talk about Earl right now. Again, 62 is the earliest you can begin withdrawing from Social Security. Now, is that a recommendation? Absolutely not. Right? Social Security is on a case-by-case basis, and I cannot stress this enough. Please do not turn on Social Security just because somebody else turned it on at a certain time. Everybody's situation is different. Everybody's finances are different. Everybody's health is different. So therefore, I think we need to kind of, give respect to those factors to determine when should we turn on Social Security. I'm just here to say we can turn it on at 62. Now, if we do so, just be very aware of how your benefits can be reduced. For example, all right, I'm just speaking hypothetically. Let's say that somebody's age allows them to turn on their full retirement age benefits at 67. We're going to talk about that here in a second. So if they turn it on at 67, let's say their benefit was going to be $3,000 a month, just keeping a nice round figure. If we turn it on at 62, Social Security is going to reduce it by certain percentages for all those years prior to our full retirement age. You're talking about a 30% reduction if we turn on at 62. Now, so now you're talking from $3,000 to $2,100, right? We just lost $900 per month. Okay. Now, there's an argument out there. Yeah, but if you turn it on early, you can invest it and blah, blah, blah. That's exactly right. I do not combat that argument whatsoever. The answer is that we don't know when we're going to pass away. That's why in kind of the overall, when I did the overall educational event, Stan, Earl, and Dell, who wins? And the common answer is we don't know. It all depends upon how long we live. So we're just simply sitting here telling people, look, if you're going to turn it on at 62, that's perfectly fine. Make sure that we've gone through some planning. Make sure we understand the numbers. Make sure we understand the ramifications, because also, too, if we turn on as early as 62, or in other words, we turn on prior to full retirement age, we also are restricted as far as how much other income we can earn without our reduced benefit being reduced even further. So just be aware that when we turn 62, we can turn on Social Security if it's the right time.
I'd totally forgotten about the fact that if you are earning money still, it can impact what you get. Wow. Totally forgot that.
Yep. It's always interesting whenever I'm sitting down with folks, and of course they're bringing in statements and we're talking through some things, and I'm asking some very systematic questions in a specific order, because again, that's my job. And they're saying, well, we're going to probably retire here. We're going to turn on Social Security at 62. Perfect. What are you going to do with your time? Because this is where I'm going. Well, I don't know. I probably, I might pick up some consultative work, or maybe do some part-time work, or if that honey-do list gets too cumbersome and I need to go get a different job, whatever the case is. I've heard it all. Okay, that's fine. Just be mindful of this and this and this. So again, we just want people to be aware of it. I'm not saying it's not a good idea. Just be aware of how the rules work with Social Security should you decide to turn it on as early as you can, which is 62.
All right. So then next is 65.
The big 6-5. This is actually one a lot of people look forward to, especially if they're coming off of, maybe some private insurance, or they've retired and they no longer have group benefits. This is when we can turn on Medicare. So the health insurance world of Medicare. Now, again, this is there's actually podcasts dedicated to nothing but Medicare.
And even then there are questions.
Right, exactly right. And there's still sub-levels to go through. So we'll keep this very, very high level, right? So here's the thing to remember, that the year you're going to turn 65, that month that you turn 65, unless your birthday is actually on the first of the month, your benefits will kick in on the first of the month that you turn 65. Okay. So that's just basically now, as we know that date is coming, you'll be reminded of it anyway, because we're all in a database, right? All of our information is floating out there. Your phone is going to blow up around 64, 64 and a half. They know that milestone is coming. So, hey, we want to get you set up for a Medicare plan. I remember years ago, in fact, it wasn't too long ago, I helped one of my clients get signed up for Medicare. He goes, now, second thing is, thank you for helping me with this. Now, can you make the phone stop ringing? I told him, I said, Jim, if I could, I would, brother. I'd be happy to do that for you. But anyway, so again, you'll be reminded of that. And that's just where I kind of remind people, say, look, if you truly need to go into Medicare, because again, you've already retired, or you're timing your retirement to go off of group benefits at the end of one month, start Medicare the first of the next month, just make sure you do your due diligence, right? There's four parts to Medicare. There's two main options. There's pros and cons to each side. Just understand how they work so you can pick the one that kind of fits the lifestyle you want to have in retirement. But again, just kind of have that milestone circled on the calendar, because 65 is a big deal, because now you're eligible for Medicare.
All right. And it does take some time to wade through all that material.
Oh,
It really does.
it really does. So give yourself plenty of time. I think the people who really do serve themselves well, the ones who say, you know what, it's coming up down the road. I'm not quite there yet. I just want to understand what my options are. I think that's so smart. We won't worry so much about premiums right now. We want to understand benefits.
Right.
What's the pros and cons of having a Medicare supplement and a standalone drug plan? What are the pros and cons of having a Medicare Advantage plan with a Part D drug plan embedded? Because again, there's just they just work differently of each other, and there's a lot of strong opinions on both sides of that fence. So just understand that here's your two main options. Give yourself time to understand them so you can pick the one that makes the most sense for you as soon as you're eligible.
All right, Tim. After 65, what do we have?
Now we're going to start talking about full retirement age benefits for Social Security, right? So we kind of alluded about that before. We talked about Earl. Now we're going to talk about Stan, right? Here's Stan. Stan has waited till his full retirement age benefit. So again, depending upon what year you were born, that determines, your full retirement age benefit. So let's just say it's 67. So again, you've got your statement in front of you. They take your top 35 years of earned income. That determines what your monthly benefit's going to be from Social Security. Now, so you have the benefit of turning that on if you would like. And again, we just kind of help people, understand that, here's the benefits of turning that on at 67 or whatever your full retirement age benefit is. Because again, just like we said a second ago, Patrice, when you wait until full retirement age benefit, and maybe you want to go out and earn some extra income, some taxable wages and whatnot, you're not going to be penalized now because you've waited until full retirement age benefit. Okay. Another comment that I'll just allude to that as well. Here's another reason why I think it's imperative that we at least consider full retirement age benefits for Social Security. Here's why. Husband and wife go into retirement together, side by side. And I see this quite often. A lot of times, maybe the wife was kind of more of a homemaker, raising the kids. Husband's got his job, kids come along, she stays home as a full-time mom and maybe does a little bit of work out in the sometime out in corporate America sometime, maybe earns a little bit of income, but she didn't really pay into the same Social Security, the same volume that maybe her husband did. Right? She paid maybe a little bit less dollars. So now all of a sudden, for example, his might be $3,000 a month, hers might be $1,000 a month at full retirement age. There is what they call a spousal benefit in Social Security. Again, I'm not going here today because that's not my expertise. I don't delve into that world at all. That's when I bring Beth on. I've had Beth on before. We'll bring her on again. But my point is, you can really reap the benefits and leverage the spousal benefit when we wait to turn on Social Security at full retirement age. So just my whole point is, it just opens up some more options available for us if we're able to, and if it makes sense to wait until full retirement age benefit for Social Security.
And now, if you are really patient and you
Yes.
wait beyond the full retirement age, you get to 70. And then
That's right. 70 is now when you get to maximize your Social Security benefit. If you haven't turned it on now, now's the time. Because from full retirement age benefit up until 70, historically speaking, Social Security has added 8% to your benefit each year.
and you
So
can't get that anyplace.
It's hard to
Can't
get
get
to these days.
8%. Yeah.
That's exactly right. CDs aren't paying 8% anymore. We don't want to go back to what the interest rates were back in the 80s. That was challenging. So you might as well go ahead and turn it on because now your Social Security has been maxed. It's maximized at age 70. Now this is now where Dell comes in. Dell has delayed it. You can turn it on at age 70. And again, like we said before, this is not a recommendation. 62, 67, or 70. It's case by case basis. Make sure you understand the numbers, because I do have clients that are saying, look, I'm going to wait. I have actually one of my clients down in Texas, ironically enough. She loves what she does. She's working through years and she's working for years. She loves what she does. She's going to turn 70, I think, actually, either this year or next year. And so she's deferred this whole time, obviously, because she's still earning income. So every household's a little bit different, but just go ahead and understand that, not only are we celebrating a new decade of life, if you haven't turned on Social Security, go ahead because you've maximized how much you're going to receive from that. So go ahead and flip that switch and take some trips.
Nice. Nice. Then we get to well, I won't say the letters. I'll let you say that. We get to 73 or 75, or who knows what it could be going forward, Tim?
Yep. Good old RMDs, right?
Yes.
The required minimum distributions. If there is one thing, I guess, that I would probably say is one of the most important aspects to retirement income planning, it's this guy right here, RMDs. Because to your point, Patrice, I mean, goodness, in the past 4 years, we've already seen two major changes to RMDs. So, I mean, by the time we get done recording, it could change again. Who knows? This is what we call legislative risk. So all we can do is simply be aware of what Congress is currently, doing as far as law, and understand that, hey, we've got the current, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is going to expire at the end of next year, 2025. So now January 1st, who knows what's going to happen? Who knows what's coming? But at least now we understand, okay, this kind of is the other end of the spectrum of, again, what we call the sweet retirement or the sweet spot for retirement, 59 and a half to RMD ages. If we're not already taking income from tax deferred accounts, this is the year now you are required to start taking the minimums. Can you take more? Yes. You can take as much as you want. You just have to take the minimum distributions. So again, this is where I think a withdrawal strategy is so imperative for retirement income planning, because now you're bringing in elements of tax deferred, taxable, and tax free.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, going all the way back to 59 and a half to 73, for example, or even a different case, 75, right? For people who were born in 1960 and later, under current legislation, your RMD age is 75. So think about that for a second. We turn 60, our RMD age is 75. That's 15 more years before we're required to take distributions. Can you imagine how that account value might perform in the next 15 years? I mean, hopefully well. It should do very well. We can help it do well. I mean, I think we can do okay with that. But the point of it is, when we get to that age, we have to be aware that this is the time now we have to start doing some planning and fulfilling the RMDs. And again, we won't go too deep into the weeds on this one. We're just kind of creating some milestone awareness today. But again, folks, keep in mind, let's say you have a couple different traditional IRAs. And let's say you still have a 401k, maybe from your last job that you retired from, and you come to RMD age. Make sure you understand that you cannot commingle the balances between a 401k and a traditional IRA. The IRS says, nope, you can't do that. If you have multiple traditional IRAs, that's fine, right? Because let's say you have two of them, and we run the calculation. And for somebody turning 73, for example, I think if memory serves me correctly, that RMD percent right now is hovering right around 3.8%, somewhere there, ballpark. Okay, you can decide, do I want to take all that from one? Do I want to split it evenly? The choice is yours if you have more than one IRA. Just keep in mind, though, that you still have to take the RMD from your 401k. You cannot commingle those balances.
Okay. Now, that 3.8%, assuming that's what it is,
Mhm.
will that go up with your age?
Great question. It does actually go up. And there's actually a chart that we have, and I share this chart with everybody because it's one of these things where, again, that's not on your shoulders to know the percentages. We just want you to be aware of, hey, you're here. Now you're here. RMD age, you're here, right? And now every year thereafter, you want to make sure you have a plan set up. Systematic is ideal, right? But if we want to kind of maybe go a little bit deeper into the overall income planning stages and maybe decide one year to the next, which IRA account do we want to pull from, then that's fine. We'll go through that process. But yeah, there's actually a chart that was created off of a life table. Basically, it's a table based upon actuary, data that says when you attain this age here, you're going to live for X number of years. So since we put another candle on the birthday cake, we get closer and closer to our demise per se. So therefore, the percentage of withdrawal increases with each passing year.
Are Roth accounts impacted by RMDs?
That is such a great question. And the beautiful thing about it is no. So if we have Roth IRA dollars, that's a great question. We are not required to take RMDs from that. So again, going back to 59 and a half, when we kind of started the conversation off that sweet spot, this is why we start talking about considering the benefits of moving dollars out of that forever taxed bucket into the never taxed bucket. Because when those funds reside in that Roth, you are never taxed on the withdrawal. Plus, also, you're not required to take a distribution because the IRS already has their revenue. So therefore, now if we have those dollars there, it can really help solidify and complement a great retirement plan because we're no longer dealing with taxes every time we take a withdrawal from a tax-free bucket.
So what's the next stage? 100? Is there any special, does the government say, well, you've made it to 100, therefore we are going to do away with all the rules that are governing what you've been getting?
Yes, forget everything you've been taught.
Yeah, right.
All changes. As of right now, no. I mean, 75 is kind of the last, number on that timeline as far as retirement income planning. Kind of what happens from here is, we kind of just transition through those 3 phases of retirement. We've talked about that before: the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years. And I think from here, it just really behooves us to, again, make sure you have a plan. That's really what this boils down to. Don't try to do this on your own. I'm not saying that nobody doesn't, I'm not saying that nobody, maybe is missing the intelligence to do it. You certainly can. But my goodness, what's easier to do? Try to learn this language all on your own or hire a translator, somebody who's walked this path with scores and scores of clients, who continues to walk this path, who will keep you current with what's going on with legislative changes. Again, that's why I keep talking about the Ed Slott group that I'm a part of. That is so empowering to have access to those resources. So that way, when I have conversations with folks, whether it be our initial conversation or we're reviewing the plan that we've been working on now for years, we now know we've got the current data that can impact the overall plan when it comes time to take income from our retirement assets.
Well, Tim, how can people reach you, the Sherpa of retirement?
So they can reach us a couple different ways. I don't have Sherpa.com, so I have to share a couple different things with you. They can get a hold of us by phone, area code 309-291-0491. They can go to our website. By the way, we just have a brand new kind of refreshed look to it. I love the way it looks. I had no problem with the previous version. We just have a few extra features and benefits now on our website, which is, again, simply housed at www.thewhisleragency.com. Again, there's no T in Whisler. It's WHISLER. And then again, they can send an email to me as well, tim@thewhisleragency.com.
All right, folks. Well, celebrate your birthday. It is your day after all. But just plan ahead to get the most out of those retirement birthday years. And follow this podcast to know when a new episode is ready for you. Please share with others as well. And thanks for being with us.
Thank you for listening to License to Spend. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The views expressed herein reflect the views of the Whisler Agency. As of the date of publication, these views may change as conditions change. The views expressed herein are not intended and should not be construed as investment advice, and they do not address any individual's specific situation. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of the Whisler Agency. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Investment advisory and financial planning services are offered through Foundations Investment Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Insurance, consulting, and education services are offered through the Whisler Agency. The Whisler Agency is a separate and unaffiliated entity from Foundations Investment Advisors, LLC. This podcast is designed to provide general information on subjects covered pursuant to IRS Circular 230. It is not intended to provide specific legal or tax advice and cannot be used to avoid penalties or to promote, market, or recommend any tax plan or arrangement for insurance products discussed guarantees or backed by the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company.